So I knew this guy, Robert Hare. Robert Hare was the world's foremost authority on psychopathy. He established the field of clinical analysis of psychopathic behavior. And Hare was a pretty agreeable guy. So, he would give people the benefit of the doubt. And he interviewed hundreds of serious psychopaths, like imprisoned violent offenders. And he told me in one of our conversations that every time he sat down with a violent offender psychopath, and he had a measure for psychopathy that was a clinical checklist, so he could identify the psychopaths from just the, say, run-of-the-mill criminals. Every time he sat down with them, they pulled the wool over his eyes. And it wasn't, he videotaped the interviews. And it wasn't until later when he was reviewing the videos that he could see what they were doing. But in person, their tricks were more sophisticated than his detection ability.
Well, okay, this is fascinating because, again, you're a great interviewer. I would love it if you interviewed somebody like Putin. So this idea that you are a fool in the face of psychopathy, it just doesn't jive with me.
I'm an agreeable guy. That's the problem. I'll give people the benefit of the doubt.
Right. But that's good because the way you reveal psychopathy is by being agreeable, not weak, but seeking with empathy to understand the other person. And in the details, in the little nuanced ways that they struggle with questions, the psychopathy is revealed. So, we're kind of, just to separate the two things. So one, overrepresentation of psychopathy online with anonymity, that's a serious, fascinating problem. But in the interview, one-on-one, I don't know if the job of a human being in conversation is to not talk to psychopaths, but to talk, how would you interview Hitler?
Well, I've had very difficult clinical interviews with people in my clinical practice. And
so how do you approach that?
Well, I really probably approach that the way I approach most conversations. And it's something like, I'm going to assume that you're playing a straight game, but I'm going to watch. And if you throw the odd crooked maneuver in, then I'll note it. And after you do it 3 times, I'll think, okay, I see. I thought we were playing one game, but we're actually playing another one. And if I'm smart enough to pick that up, that usually works out quite successfully for me. But I'm not always smart enough to pick that up.
But see, here's the nice thing. There's a one-on-one conversation that's not recorded is different than one that's listened by a lot of people, because I would venture I trust the intelligence of the viewer and the listener to detect even better than you.
Yes, and I think that's true, by the way.
To detect the psychopathy.
Yeah, I've had the odd interview with people that I wasn't happy with having organized because I felt that I had brought their ideas to a wider audience than might have been appropriate. But my conclusion and the conclusion of my producers and the people I talked to was that we could run the interview, the discussion, and let the audience sort it out. And I would say they do. So I think as a general rule of thumb, that's true. And I also think that the long form interviews are particularly good at that because it's not that easy to maintain a manipulative stance, especially if you're empty for like 2.5 hours.
Yes.
You get tired, you get irritable, you show that you lose the track, you're going to start leaking out your mistakes. And
that actually is the case for all the world leaders. I would say 1 hour is too short. Something happens at like 2 hour plus mark where you start to leak, and I'm trusting the intelligence of the listener to sort of to detect that.
Yeah, and it might be the intelligence of the distributed crowd. And I mean, that is what I've seen with the YouTube interviews, is that it's hard to fool people as such over a protracted period of time. And I guess it's partly because everybody brings a slightly different set of falsehood detectors to the table. And if you aggregate that, it's pretty